I want to thank all four of you for being here. I want to go back to the map that I showed you earlier. I want your comment on the map. It's over to your left or right, whichever way you want to look. And you can see that according to this map, al-Qaeda's presence is in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Somalia, Algeria, Mali, Niger, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, and Nigeria. Do any of you, my question is, do you agree that those are accurate countries that al-Qaeda has a presence in or not? Dr. Jones?
Mr. Chairman, just looking at that for the first time, I would say that al-Qaeda or one of its allies is present in the countries you have identified. Let me just say two things. One is that in some of these cases, I would call them really an al-Qaeda affiliate in the case of Somalia and Yemen. In other cases, as in parts of Algeria, there may be the group, those who signed with blood, or down in Mali, Ansar al-Din, allies, have a foreign affiliate.
Al-Qaeda are al-Qaeda affiliates. Let's use that terminology. Dr. Kagan.
Yeah, like Dr. Jones, I would agree that there are al-Qaeda or affiliated or allied movements in all of those states. We might argue about some of the blobology, and I think the Afghan presence at the moment is a little less than is implied there, but in general terms, yes.
Mr. Jocelyn?
You know, it's funny, we have this conversation about putting together a map at the Long War Journal constantly about how to do this, because it's actually very tricky.
You can use my map.
Yeah, I agree with most of it. I'd have to sort of pick at it a little bit. I mean, I think, see, here's the challenge, okay? You look at, example, an area like the Sinai, where we're tracking terrorists right now, and who's there, and we're tracking al-Qaeda operatives right there, and they seem to have built a force in the hundreds, if not thousands, in the Sinai right now. Including specific individuals. In fact, there's a great article up at the Long War Journal today about a former doctor to bin Laden who's been basically running some jihadists there. The problem is, I agree with most of the map. I'd have to sort of pick over it a little bit more. But I think it does make sense to say that you have al-Qaeda or affiliated groups. Then you also have associated movements, which the collusion there is often a lot stronger than people give them credit for.
And there's some wannabes in the groups, too.
There's some wannabes. You have some guys who are really just flying the flag, who aren't really connected to the overall network. But I think there are a number of groups. You know, Seth had mentioned Ansar al-Din, for example. The Treasury Department's designation of them is very clear, or State Department's designation is very clear, that they've been working very carefully and closely with AQIM for a long time. You know, so it's reasonable to include those groups in your map.
All right. Dr. Heghammer.
Well, I agree largely with the map and also with the comments that have been made already. I would also have added perhaps a little red dot in the Sinai.
Little red dot to the Sinai, okay.
Yeah. In Egypt, yes. But I would also mention in this context that the size of the area covered is not necessarily a measure of strength. Some of the groups happen to be in desolate areas, so they get a lot of red ink there.
Because there's nobody else there.
That's right.
There's nobody in those areas.
Whereas some of the smaller dots have very powerful affiliates.
Thank you. Dr. Kagan, if I wrote your comments down correctly, you said that the United States lacks a overall strategy. What does that mean? And explain it briefly.
Sir, I do not think that we have articulated a strategy for defeating al-Qaeda as a global network with affiliates and its associates. I think that we have undertaken a collection of tactics, and we have made a number of broad statements about this, but I believe that this is a challenge that is worthy of the kind of analytical and planning effort that went into NSC 68 or any other extremely serious war. And candidly, especially after the death of Osama bin Laden, I would have looked for a major planning effort of that variety to think about what the next stage was. And I do not believe, at least if that's happened, then I'm completely unaware of it.
So if I understand what you said, overall strategy of the United States to deal with al-Qaeda, al-Qaeda operatives, affiliates. We don't have one of those, but if events occur, we have tactical response to each specific attack.
Well,
is that a fair statement or not?
More than that. I mean, there is an offensive component to what the Obama administration is attempting to do, and there is a theory behind, I think, what they're undertaking with their targeted strikes and other activities. But I don't see a coherent, holistic strategy that says this is the network we're looking at, these are the effects we need to generate on the network, these are how we're going to apply all the tools of government and so forth to do that. And I think it's going to require an effort of that magnitude to scope the problem and then scope a strategy that might be successful.
Let me ask you this question. I want to talk about al-Nusra in Syria and their influence in Syria. What are they doing in Syria? I guess of all the rebel groups there, I'm concerned about them. But how influential are they, and what are they actually doing? Anybody want to weigh in on that? You all know, so
sure,
somebody tell me.
I'm happy to keep talking. Jabhat al-Nusra is extremely influential in Syria, and I think its influence is generally growing. That has largely to do with its ability to receive large amounts of external aid
From
Qatar, from other countries in the Gulf, and from the international
governments are supporting al-Nusra.
I can't prove that governments are supporting Jabhat al-Nusra.
But you think they are?
But I believe that the Qatari government has been, and I've seen indications that the Kuwaiti government may be as well, or elements within the Kuwaiti government may be as well. Certainly private jihadi donors within the Gulf and elsewhere in the world are supporting the movement, and as a result of that, it's probably the best armed and equipped fighting force in Syria. I think we're already in a situation where there is going to be a conflict between the Free Syrian Army and the moderate forces that it represents and Jabhat al-Nusra under almost any scenario, unless there's a complete Assad victory, which I think is very unlikely. And right now, my assessment is Jabhat al-Nusra probably would win that fight.
So as we progress, those are the two factions on either side that are going to come to conflict, and your money is on al-Nusra.
Unless the situation changes, I think that Jabhat al-Nusra has the advantage. They also have an advantage in that they've been establishing local government, and they have been setting up local authorities in various different parts of Syria that they control and trying to build themselves. Now, I don't think they actually have a whole lot of popular support for the ideology, but we've seen this phenomenon before, that they're effective defenders, and therefore they put themselves into leadership roles.
Thank you. Ranking Member, Mr. Sherman.
Thank you.